this company, in this regiment.
Each trooper will learn this operation by heart. 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000.
Tonight, we're gonna have to cross the river.
These crowds are gonna catch some hell.
Do is remember what you were taught. I guarantee you gravity will take care of the rest.
And here we are, ready to do Band of Brothers, episode 2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So, welcome this evening. If you're not watching Eurovision, that's great. You can hang out with us. But if you're feeling left out, we may occasionally check the scores during the stream. But yeah. So, if you haven't seen this before, we go into a big in-depth breakdown of the entire episode. We're going to talk about how it was filmed, where it was filmed, all of that kind of stuff. It is Saturday, so I do have a glass of wine. Please join me.
I mean, who would ever drink on your stream, Lance?
Oh, you always drink. I don't always drink, but I'll drink tonight because it's Saturday. So
apple.
Yeah, really looking forward to this one because we had a great first episode. We had a week's delay because some of us weren't available last Sunday, and some of us have slightly complex conflicts tomorrow. So we thought we'd do this on Saturday. We didn't want to leave it any longer. But going forward, it may be on Saturday at 8 o'clock or it may be on Sunday at 8 o'clock. It will depend on our various commitments, but it will definitely be every week if we can. Good to have one of our regulars in the chat. Good to see you, mate. So, okay, good. I'm also checking on a crucial email from a important guest who's going to be coming on the channel soon.
Ooh.
And I was hoping to do a tech check with them today. Hopefully I'll do that after this. But Michael Ironside is going to be coming on the Outcast Creative channel in the not too distant future.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, I think possibly the 20th of May. If he comes on the 20th, I've got a stream scheduled for that day, so I'll be rescheduling that stream. All right, so we're going to get into it. I'm going to keep off camera for most of this. So I'll pop on occasionally. Now, as I said, I have a confession to make. I wanted to watch the series again, one episode per week for this podcast, but just couldn't. I watched the entire series this week. Well, it's funny you should say that because when I was preparing my notes for episode 2, I got so into it. I was like, I need to watch the next one now.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did as well, mate. So I've done my notes for episode 3 as well. As well as episode 2, but we're only going to cover episode 2 tonight because we go into it in quite a lot of detail, so that takes plenty of time. So let me check my avatar here. Bridge too far kind of works, but I'll just do I'll just put my Dakota on there. There we go for this episode. So yeah, okay, episode 2, Day of Days. So well, I guess you could say this is what's called an action episode.
Mm.
Now,
or some might say this is where the rubber hits the road.
Indeed.
Nice.
I'm going to go through the episode in detail, but what I'm going to do is rather than go through the whole episode and then we'll come back and tear it apart, I'm actually going to pause at different points to see if the inside man has anything he wants to mention about that particular scene.
Mm-hmm.
As always, we also have some exclusive behind the scenes stuff. So we're going to show you some images towards the beginning of the stream, actually, because they're kind of relevant to the opening sequence of episode 2. But yeah, so as I go through the breakdown, unlike last time, I'm going to pause and we'll sort of talk about scenes in sequence. Don't forget you can take part in the chat if you've got things you want to comment, things you want to mention. Please do so, and we'll endeavour to address any questions you might have and take things from there. Now, this episode goes straight into where we left off, which is the invasion air armada is on its way to Normandy, with the various characters in various planes, and we don't even have there's no preamble before the titles this time. There's no montage of veterans. We're straight into the titles, and then we're straight into Normandy, and the planes are flying in the dark clouds. Up ahead, we can see the flak. We've established that Lieutenant Meehan's plane, who is the commander of Easy Company, we've established he's in a different plane from Winters, and he gets hit. His plane gets hit. So yeah, we're straight into it. So on my DVD, there's no preamble with veterans. Have you got a preamble on your version, Chris?
Yes, I pulled up from Netflix, and after the opening credits, which says Band of Brothers right here, that's when they show the different veterans talking.
Oh yeah, no. There's none before the credits this time. Last episode it was before the credits.
It was right here, and then you go right into this.
Yeah. So we have a bit with Damian Lewis. Yeah, sorry, I've got that in my notes. So this is the real Damian Lewis.
Dick Winters.
Sorry, Dick Winters. Thank you. The real character that Damian Lewis is playing. I'm going to get torn such a new arsehole for saying that. Every time I make a mistake, there's a comment about it somewhere on social media.
Also, I did take some more stills this time because, God, this show, I could take 1,000. So I was trying to be liberal, but there's so many stills I want to take.
Well, there's key things I want to look at, and you've got the episode there ready to run as well, haven't you? So we can kind of run it and pause it, right?
Yeah, I'll pull up in a second. This is on Netflix, so.
All right. So this is the preamble. You can, if you want to take it to the section where Meehan's plane gets hit when it gets struck, take it to there.
Okay.
We're just going to talk about this sequence. This is a complex visual effects sequence that involved a combination of full-size built Dakota replicas, very large miniatures, smaller miniatures, and then miniatures were replicated to show the large numbers of the fleet. Other visual effects elements, weather plates and so on. You've got flak, you've got the moonlight off the clouds and so on. Now, keep in mind, again, this is 2001, so this is the same era as Lord of the Rings visual effects we're talking about. It has to be said that the visual effects still look pretty good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we've got some behind the scenes. Here we are. So this is, I think, the large Dakota model under construction. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And
this is the 1/3 scale, I believe.
Right. And most of the stills that we've got behind the scenes for this episode are relevant to this sequence. So you've got a site there. You've got 4 guys for scale. For some reason, there appears to be Paul Weller in that photo. I'm not quite sure why. He's a good lookalike. So now, why was it built to that size, Inside Man? Explain the reasoning behind that scale.
For detailing more than anything. Where you were talking about rivet counters. You've been talking about rivet counters on numerous things. This is one of those things where you can get in really nice and close to some of these, and you can actually count the rivets.
You
Um,
can. The rivets
and
are
it
the
was
rivets are in shot.
yeah, and it, it rather than seeing a miniature from some kind of distance, which tends to be the case for most kind of aircraft or ship miniatures. These are classed as bigatures, for want of a better word,
Yeah.
because of the level of scale. But it is purely because of the definition of detail that you will get. So it sells the fact that these are real
Real.
aircraft.
Hmm. How long would it take to build a model like that?
I think, in fact, I actually spoke to a couple of the modelers on this, and I think this took a couple of weeks. It wasn't as long as you might think. Um, these guys are incredibly skilled at what they do. The sculpting. I mean, these things were made from anything from polystyrene to plastering clay, plasticine, um, fiberglass, wood. So everything goes in there if it can actually, create the form of the aircraft. So it's not necessarily made out of one particular thing. So
Sure.
the kitchen sink is thrown into these kind of things. But boy, do they look good.
This one we're looking at on screen now, is that the same model again? Or is
Yes, I believe it is. Yeah.
it is? Okay. All right. So this is, but the back door of this seems to be pretty large. Would they get the actor of Winters to stand in that door and, like shoot that shot? Or would that be a visual composite that's added later?
That would be a visual composite. You're absolutely right on that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I figured as much, but I wasn't sure. So this is presumably at Hatfield somewhere?
At Hatfield, yeah. I think it was Hangar 57 that was used for the VFX shots. So all the modeling, the blue screen stuff, and everything was done in Hangar 57,
Right.
um, which was one of the very, very important hangars when the studio was an aircraft manufacturing plant during the Second World War. So, but yeah, um, yeah, and really, I mean, the group of blokes that did these kind of miniatures, they're so talented. Every
Mm.
last one of them, from the painters, because it's not easy to get the right paint finish. It's not just a case of getting a can out and just whizzing over it and Bob's your uncle.
No, indeed.
I mean, there's all kinds of texturing that has to go on. But yeah, a very, very talented group of fellows, I must say.
Let's have a look at a couple more images of this. So this, I'm guessing this is a smaller one,
I believe this is the 1/5 scale.
right? Okay, and I imagine this would be the one that would be shot against basically a blue screen as we see here, and then
Yeah.
replicated many times as a visual template to create an armada of planes.
Yeah, it's that technique is called tiling. In essence, it's you take that picture and you can either increase it in size or decrease it in size, and you can basically put it onto another picture, onto a background plate, um, as individual tiles. Hence, it being called tiling.
Yeah, and I suppose the one that we just looked at, that's for um compositing shots of when you're going to have an actor standing in the doorway.
Hmm.
Therefore, it sort of needs to hold up to a higher level of scrutiny, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Okay. I mean, it's it's so interesting the different levels of detail that go into creating effectively one shot. There we can see the rig
yes.
for this being set up to be filmed, which is my avatar. Now, this is interesting. So this is that's a practical flame on that shot, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So this would be the effect shot for Meehan's plane being hit
Yes.
when it goes up in flame. And it's interesting that this isn't a full model. It's only got that front part. So let's have a look at this sequence.
Yeah.
Blue, is that the bit?
Yeah, just tell me when to stop playing too.
Yeah, let's
here.
Play this bit. Yeah, so they get, that's right, that the engine takes a hit and he's like, tell him to get out now.
Yeah.
And but it all happens too quickly. There you go. So that brief shot there when you saw the explosion coming out the side of the window is effectively the enhanced version of that visual effect shot that we've got here. There you go.
Yeah. And of course, as you quite rightly say, you know, using the word enhanced, obviously it's graded, you know, you have the background plates and everything, but also it's visually enhanced by the flame VFX as well, which I think are actually very good.
Well, I'll tell you, until I saw this photograph of yours, I thought all the flame stuff would have been CGI. I didn't think there would have been any real flames on the model. So it's surprising how you really can't tell the difference sometimes. You know, you think you know, you turn out you're not so sure. So there we are. There's another shot. Again, you can see the scale involved here.
I actually think that's really quite a wonderful shot. That you know, with the last picture there. That's a pretty telling picture, I think.
I love the scaffolding. You know, it's all this scaffolding holding it up. And the cone was probably the only bit of it that survived at the end of the. I wonder if someone's got that in their living room.
Somebody does have that. Funny enough, I spoke to one of the guys that did build that. Him and his brother were part of the team that built this, and they actually had it. They actually had the model. They kept it.
Have they still got it now?
I believe not. No. Probably
eventually fell apart, I would imagine. These things aren't going to last 20 years, are they?
No.
And I'm guessing that's the Bigitcher's unit, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
So just the unit alone for that section, there you go, is, you know, like 30 guys there. Now this is I remember I used to have one of these. You could chuck it out of the upstairs bedroom window and the parachute would inflate and your plastic soldier would go down to the ground.
Yeah.
But this is a miniature soldier. Again, I imagine, what was this, released to get a plate shot for multiples?
It was. It's exactly that. It's precisely that. You know, so you would have plenty of these being basically hoisted up, then dropped down. So because it's attached to a rig anyway, it's going in the right direction. You know, so it can only go in one direction. It can't sort of float about or flutter about. So I think this is in the process of it actually being hoisted up. And of course, when Winters, strangely enough, when Winters actually did his drop in his rig, that was actually done on the 6th of June. That was shot on the 6th of June.
Let's Blue, have we got the bit where Winters goes out the plane when he drops?
I'll find it. 1 second.
Yeah, that'd be good to show that.
Okay.
I remember on the behind the scenes Band of Brothers, he basically had a full size harness, a bit like this, but obviously not with matchsticks, kind of, you know, wooden bits.
Yeah.
And they had a big green or blue screen behind him, and he kind of went down in a controlled descent. And you actually have those devices for parachute training. They actually have something quite similar to that at jump school.
Yes.
I've seen them.
Yes, they do. Yeah, you're right.
So he basically sort of went on one of those out the you know, and they filmed it with a blue screen.
It's a very fast sequence, but yeah, I got it.
Okay, great. So just to talk through the plot up to this point, because we're going to do this as we go today, slightly different from our format of last week. Basically, with the story, we see that various planes get hit. We know that Mian's plane has exploded. We see it crash. So we know it's unlikely that anyone's going to have survived that. We really only met Lieutenant Mian in the last episode, but there was enough to kind of get a sense of who he was. He looked like he was going to be a competent, forthright commander.
Yeah.
There's a huge number of shots of characters in planes in this sequence when the planes come under fire. Not just Winter's plane, but you see a lot of other people. Babe Heffron is one of the veterans who talks at the beginning, after the title sequence, but before we go into this maelstrom of gunfire that the planes are experiencing, the flak and all the rest of it. And one of the things he says, and his voice is breaking, is he says, "We lost a lot of good people." You know, and he's talking really about the first 2 days, and his voice cracks, and you can see he's really back there. He's right back in that time.
Yeah.
Quite a moving moment. So Winter's the two guys in Winter's plane, the more experienced pilot is saying to the other one, "You're going too fast," and he's saying, "We've got to get more altitude." And of course, a lot of these pilots were very young. Some of them were not experienced. Most of them had not done a combat drop before. There were some who had. A lot of them were allocated to the 82nd, which is why one section of the 82nd, one company, had almost all of their guys down in the right place, and they had quite experienced pilots that have been with them in Sicily. But the 101st weren't as lucky as that. A lot of the pilots panicked. There's a horrible scene where one Dakota comes apart midair, and you see a paratrooper go flying past the window. There's another scene which is very reminiscent of a number of testimonies that I've read, both British and English, of people falling out of a plane on fire like Roman candles, which you see with Mian's plane.
What's quite odd, and I think it was considered to be quite odd by a number of the veterans who have written their accounts of this, is that some of the pilots of these Dakotas were actually British.
Yeah, that's right.
They were really quite taken aback by the fact that these weren't American pilots that were taking them into battle. Some of them were loaned from the RAF, and and you're right. A lot of them quite inexperienced in terms of flying in battle zones, in war zones. Under heavy fire like this, and flying too fast, they should have slowed down. Flying too high, they should have been lower. Putting the green light on before they'd even reached the drop zone. Some of the men had dropped into the channel.
Yeah,
because the green light went on too early. So there was some real poor decision making there.
But a number of them were also very good, we have to say, and they did put people down on target, or I mean, these are very brave men. So on Winter's plane, it's hit by a shell. I don't think this particular part of the story is actually true. I think it's a bit of dramatic embellishment, but replicating what happened on other planes for certain. The co-pilot is taken out. The pilot panics and he just thinks, fuck it, puts the green light on because he wants to get out of there. So Winters jumps, which is this bit. And out the plane he goes. Now that's, I think that's probably the miniature at first. But I might be wrong.
Yeah,
but...
and then we cut to, obviously there's that.
This is him.
Yeah, that sort of this is a motion control camera. So all of those moves that camera makes, those individual moves where he looks down between his boots and he sees the the flames and the machine gun fire and everything, and it comes back up to him and it looks at his face and it sort of goes around. And that was a motion control unit. So those moves were programmed into that camera. And
wow.
And that's replicated again and again and again.
That's a nice shot.
Yeah.
Hold that there for the moment. Anyone who in the chat remembers playing Call of Duty and dropping down in this sequence, say who you are in the chat, because I do. Man, that was good fun. It was like that was like playing Band of Brothers. You were there in the computer game, and you got to drop into.
Hey, man. World War II definitely helped out the Call of Duty franchise, boy.
Oh yeah,
God Almighty!
I mean, it launched it. It launched it.
Yeah.
When I watched this, I was looking for things I'd missed, and the amount of detail in this shot as he comes down. If you want to play a little bit more,
okay, right there. Oops.
And I think that's probably the. Yeah, but there was a little cut there. I think that was probably the miniature was probably the scene, the shot before this one. That you've got like there's a burning plane on the ground. I think there's a house on fire. You can see the flak coming up, that kind of stuff. Winters lands, and everybody got given these leg bags at the last minute, and they hadn't really been tested. And the idea was you dropped it below your leg when you went out, your body when you went out the plane, and a lot of them carried the weapon. Some people decided to say screw that, and they jumped with their weapon. They were holding their weapon, or it was in their webbing. But most people's leg bags just disappeared. They got ripped off their legs, and they vanished. So there's probably thousands of leg bags all over Normandy.
This was actually a British idea. This was something that
was it. No wonder it went wrong.
Yeah, and it hadn't been tested. It hadn't been tried.
No.
And it was kind of a conceptual thing more than anything. So someone's come up with this. I've got this really good idea. So once you reach, once you're out and your chute's up, you drop your leg bag, so you're, when you feel the slack on the leg bags, because I think the rope was something like 16 feet long or something. So when you feel the leg bag rope slack, then you brace yourself with a landing, because remember, a lot of these young men couldn't see the ground because it really was pitch black. Aside from the machine gun fire and the flak and everything, but it was just a way of anticipating your actual landing. But it's funny when he actually lands. So when Winters lands, the brief shot of him after he's landed and kind of gathering himself together, that shot was actually done. That was right opposite one of my local pubs.
Right. So that was up your way.
Yeah, that was shot in Epping Green. Just that one brief thing where he's sort of gathering himself together. Yeah.
Well,
which is quite strange.
I do want to come on to the locations of where things were filmed for this episode in good time. What's interesting about it is how far spread this episode is in terms of filming locations. You've got like about 4 different places where it was shot. On screen now is Nolan Hemmings, and it may interest people to know that this is the son of David Hemmings, who appeared in Gladiator. He's like the gladiatorial arena announcer. Yeah. He plays Charles E. Chucky Grant in Band of Brothers. So that is David Hemmings and Gail Honeycutt's son.
And he's also in a very, very good film called Blow Up, a very good thriller.
Yeah, you mean David Hemmings is not
David Hemmings,
not Nolan Hemmings. He was a bit young to appear in.
He was a very I don't even think he was a glint in his eye.
Yeah, so that's Nolan Hemmings in there. It's kind of a bit of history. So moving on with the story, I mean, I really like episode 2 for a whole host of reasons.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I like it is because it really covers the chaos of that first 24 hours of D-Day, which we've read so much about in various books. Cornelius Ryan's book, we've seen it in the film The Longest Day. Somebody mentioned Ham and Jam, of course. While this is going on, the gliders are landing at Pegasus Bridge, but let's not start talking about that. But the 82nd and the 101st were scattered all over Normandy. Some of the sticks of paratroopers, each stick's 18 men, ended up nowhere near their objectives. Some of them didn't get back to their objectives till 2 or 3 days, whereas others landed right on top. It was a real mixed bag. But the advantage of this wide scattering of airborne forces was that it completely confused the Germans, and they couldn't really tell where the objectives were of these forces because they were all over the place. So it certainly achieved that much. Now, one of the things I noticed that I'd missed before in the opening with everybody going in is in Meehan's stick, on Meehan's plane, and therefore this is when he is killed, is Simon Pegg's character.
Yeah.
He's in that stick.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's basically, because he would have been reallocated to Lieutenant Meehan and would have been his adjutant because he was no longer working for Sobel. So he's killed in that in Meehan's plane. I completely missed that. So I didn't see that before. And they deliberately have one shot of him in the plane right after Meehan sort of is seen to sort of look back in. So it's good that they put that in there. James Willard is Sergeant Evans, I think, might be the character. Thank you for that. So so when Winters is landed, having achieved his Medal of Honor landing sequence, Winters teams up with Private Hall, who is a radio man without a radio, and between them they have a knife and a Thompson. And the Private Hall is played none other than by actor Andrew Scott, who is now an A-list actor. So they really were casting well with this thing. I don't know if you want to get a shot of Andrew Scott up. I'm sure I've got a photograph of him here as well. But it's interesting. He would go on to become a James Bond villain in the Daniel Craig era. But he also has appeared in dozens of films and television shows. When I first saw this, I didn't know who he was. He was not famous at that time. But I thought he was American. So very good accent. And here he is in the show.
Okay.
So Private Hall teams up with Private Hall. They start heading one direction, and there's an AA position which they decide not to attack. And Now, this was something that confused me, and I'd like to get people's thoughts on this, especially those people in chat. So, Winters says, and it makes no sense. They go to head one direction. The AA gun opens fire. They pause, and then Winters says, "Wait till they reload." And when they're reloading, then they move out. Well, that makes no sense to me because while they're reloading, the gun's not firing. Therefore, there isn't as much noise covering the noise that Winters and Hall are making while they move out. Why did he say that? Why didn't they just move while it was firing?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps because to reload, you have so many men that have to be preoccupied with the reload.
That's true. It does take the entire crew to do the reloading, and it only takes one person to fire it. I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
that's probably an answer that Dale Dye would have given us if.
Yeah.
Do you know what woke means? For those people that haven't seen it, the Dale Dye interview is on the channel. The man who trained these people. What an amazing guest he was. I had a lovely email off him, by the way, inside Man.
Oh, good. Oh, that's fantastic.
So
wonderful.
And I have had some dialogue with him since then. So they're in these woods. So we've got various woods in this episode. My first question is, where are these woods? Where is this? Where is this taking place? Now, according to resources, we have Ashdown Forest as one location where this episode was shot, and Hurtwood Forest as another location where it was shot.
I mean, the only indications that we got when we were being ferried over to the location was that it was all East Grinstead.
Right.
So both of these may well be in the East Grinstead area. I don't know where either of the forests are actually located, but all I can recall is that when we were all being ferried over, it was always East Grinstead. So all this stuff that we did on this was East Grinstead.
But you wouldn't have been on this particular.
No, not on this. No, not on this sequence.
It's just two actors, obviously, because Hurtwood Forest and Hurtwood House is in the middle of frigging nowhere. We're going to see some cottage buildings.
Right, okay.
It's in Surrey. It's in Surrey.
Right.
We're going to see some cottage buildings, and I know where those are, and I'm going to show you those. They're called the Surrey Hills Cottages now, but they were as good as derelict when Band of Brothers was filmed. When I went to this location to look at it for filming for Pegasus Bridge, we were taken there, and I was walking past them, and I said, "These are the cottages from Band of Brothers." And he said, "Yeah, how'd you know that?" I said, "Well, I looked see what was shot here." Yeah. The owner of Hurtwood House and the people that own that land, he does actually own some World War II vehicles, and I think some of them might have been used in the shoot there, but I'll come on to that when we get to that scene. So Winter says, "I tell you, you're a rifleman first and a radio man second." I thought that was a great line.
Yeah, good line.
Yeah, that's fun.
Now, before we move on, does anyone want to say anything else about that opening drop sequence?
I mean, I would assume like you guys work in industry, but I've always heard that 2001 CGI, a lot of times early CGI, it's easier to film it at nighttime, but also I guess like lore wise, like Gary was saying, these guys would be dropping in at nighttime, and considering it's been 20 some odd years on the HBO budget, it looks amazing for considering the time. I mean, it's not as good as some 2024 CGI, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is this whole opening sequence, this whole drop sequence, when you look at when you know the story, because it's such an enormously massive story, this D-Day drop, just with the 101st Airborne, just even if it's just with Easy Company, it's still a vast story. But what they've done here, and full marks and full credit going to John Orloff for this. Um, they've shown and not told. They've done the classic, the perfect movie thing, which is the show not tell. And they've shown so many different facets of this drop, in such a short space of time, and they've communicated such an enormous amount of information in this tiny, tiny little window. I think it's a perfect opening for this episode, or for any episode of any World War II TV series or movie. It's just perfect, absolutely perfect. The way this piece of the story's been told is just superb.
I had to keep that shots right there because I felt it was important. These guys are just before they launch have their rosaries or their different religious beliefs, and because these guys might die, so
Yeah,
it's very important.
this is the dispersal pattern of the sticks of the 101st. So every one of these blobs represents a stick of 18 paratroopers. And you can see that the circled areas are the intended drop zones. I believe drop zones T and N, and I might need to check my facts on this, but this is my understanding. Certainly it was the case in the 82nd area. I think these two drop zones were cancelled at the last minute because this whole area was known to be flooded. And they found that out very last minute, and so they changed, because there's a scene in The Longest Day where John Wayne's character is complaining about his drop zones being changed with only very little notice. But it was good that they were changed, because the casualties would have been far higher if they had not been changed.
Yeah, and of course they had what was it they called it? Rommel's asparagus. I think they called it the huge spikes sticking out of the marshes and some of the flooded land as well. So the paratroopers would land on a lot of those. Rommel's asparagus.
Yeah, I think it was this discovery of the asparagus that they didn't know the areas were flooded. It was the discovery of new asparagus that got the drop zones moved.
Yeah.
And interestingly, on the map here is where I've got my mouse marker now. That's the Liffey Bridge, which is where the most fierce fighting with the 82nd Airborne took place.
Oh yeah,
which
is,
with
yeah,
Day or Die's No Better Place to Die project. Chef de Pont, which is the other bridge across the Meredith River. It's kind of funny to call it a river because it's not even as big as a canal, really, but it is big enough to stop a tank, and that's the important thing.
Yeah.
So you need a bridge to cross it. So these two bridges here and here were absolutely vital, but that was the job of the 82nd, capture and hold those, as well as Sam Meriglees. And the 101st job was more to secure the incoming exits from the bridge, the causeways, as they were known, from the beach. Sorry, you had causeway number 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think there were, and that was their main job. But it's interesting. You can see, look, some sticks landed south of Caen. I mean, can you imagine trying to get back from there? And there's one stick that landed. See this arrow here? Yeah, one stick landed 21 miles that way from the drop zone. So that's the stick that landed furthest away. There's one that landed 15 miles up that way, and there's one that landed 20 miles up that way. So
I mean, it's quite incredible when you think that all of these odds, these sort of odds that they had no control over, were stacked against them. But the odds that they had in their favor was their incredible training.
Yeah.
And I think that I know that Sobel does kind of divide people. People are very divided on Sobel's contribution, but I think the Men of Easy Company in particular, they're the ones whose opinions matter most on Sobel. Whether they liked him or disliked him is completely irrelevant. It's the fact that he gave them that hardness, that ability. He sort of ingrained that level of toughness in them. He really kind of molded that company. So whether whether we dislike the character in the TV series or in the books, or whether the men dislike the character, whether they dislike Sobel, they all really gave him credit for the way they turned out as a company.
Yeah.
Testament to him.
Naz is saying that poor red dot all on its own.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I think talking about this one here, maybe. Not to mention the one that's 21 miles that way, and it's only like one stick. That's one plane that went. At least it didn't drop them in the sea.
Yeah.
Look at this one. You got this one here. That's right on the beach. So you probably would have been coming down on bunkers and trenches.
Yeah.
With men not a good place to land. That not a good place to land. Right, so let's we'll move on with the plot a bit. So Hall and Winters are sort of wandering around, trying to figure out where they are, and we'll come back to the woods, but this was probably filmed, as I said earlier, in either Ashdown Forest or Hurtwood Forest. I don't think these scenes were filmed in Hatfield.
No,
I don't think so. The woods are not dense enough around that area. So they come to a path with a stream, and they link up with two guys, and the two guys are from the 82nd Airborne. And this is a reverse of the scene we see in The Longest Day, where one of Benjamin Vandervoot's officers says, "We even picked up some guys from the 101." Always remember that line.
Yeah.
So they've kind of flipped that, which I thought was good. They then follow the train track, and on the train track they then link up with Lipton, Malarkey, Garnier, and Joe Toy, and possibly a couple of others. I may have missed some names. And they're on a railway track, and there is an actual bridge location which is leading up to the sequence where they're going to ambush the Germans. Now, I've got a question about that. Was that bridge built? I know they did have a partial railway built on the set at Hatfield.
Yeah, that partial the railway set was actually there were two railways that were constructed. One of them was over at Ayolt St Peters, just not far from the studios, and the other one was at Hatfield House, and the one at Hatfield House was the one for the concentration camp. Now, the bridge itself, I think this was real. I think this is a location. I can't say for certain, but if this isn't the location and this was built, then then the construction team and design team have really outdone themselves.
It felt like a big build. I think it was, bearing in mind the number of small railway places and bridges that exist like that. I felt like it must be. I thought it was more likely to be real than built.
Yeah.
But they did build some big sort of causeway and rampart road sections, so I guess they could have built one, but I felt it was probably a real one.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see that, so I can't say, but and I can't recall anybody ever talking about this being a construction.
Well, this is the first action in the scene. There's a group of Germans who are clearly moving from one location to the next.
Yeah.
They've got some horse-drawn kit. It's, probably a platoon of men. Garnier, of course, who's recently found out that his brother's been killed at Monte Casino, goes absolutely batshit crazy.
That was powerful.
Yeah, and mows down a whole load of people. Should we show a bit of the actual scene? Have you got the?
I'll pop in a second.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So we've already established there's some tension between Winters and Garnier. On the way over, there's a comment where Garnier says he's not keen on a Quaker leading them into battle. He thinks he's a Quaker, and it's very subtle. I noticed a lot of these things, that the little details that are in these character arcs. Garnier actually challenges Winters a couple of times in this episode, quite early on, and then they round off that arc of challenges really nicely at the end, which I'll come back to.
Yeah.
But when you watch this on repeated viewings, you really notice these details.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that also is in the real subtlety of Frank John Hughes acting. You can really see it in his face. I love him as an actor. I think he's an absolutely superb actor.
He's one of the few real Americans in the cast, I think.
Yeah, and in this role, I mean, he is Bill Garnier. I was amazed at watching interviews of Bill Garnier, lengthy interviews of Bill Garnier, and reading some of the other books, particularly the book that Bill did with Babe Heffron.
Right.
And you really get a sense of who he is, and then you watch Frank John Hughes' performance of Bill Garnier. He's absolutely nailed it. He's nailed it. It's an amazing performance.
Yeah. Pull up plans whenever you're ready.
I agree. Yeah, let's play a bit of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see the hate in his eyes.
Yeah, Winters actually has to order him to stop firing.
Yeah.
And you can see this big tension between them.
Yeah.
I mean, he machine guns everybody, the horses and everything. I mean, they chucked a couple of grenades in there as well, so there's no way the horses were going to get out unscathed, sadly. And then somebody executes the horses.
But I think that's the only time you actually see Winters lose his temper in the whole series.
Wow.
You never see him kind of lose his shit.
Yeah,
it's the only time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. Several Germans are killed. A couple of them try and surrender. Not really practical for them to take prisoners at this stage, to be honest. Yeah, great performance by Frank John Hughes, as Inside Man said. Would be great to know the exact location where that bridge scene was shot. If it was a set, if anybody knows, do let us know. I'd be very curious to know. My money is that it's probably near Hatfield somewhere, that particular scene, because I don't think they would have been able to do that with a railway bridge down in Surrey, because most of those lines are still running. So that's my thoughts, but I could be wrong, and maybe it was constructed. Haven't been able to find out. So if anyone knows in the chat, let us know. Dan Candy has said Winters loses his cool when he orders Spears to relieve Dyke. Well, less him losing his cool and more kind of taking appropriate action, I think.
Yeah.
The Germans do get completely slaughtered. They didn't have a chance. But it's war. War sucks. So
I think when you examine that, Garnier's action there, some might consider that to be, overkill, or even a war crime, if you like. However, as you said, they couldn't take prisoners. There was no facility for them to take any prisoners. But if you do read into it, if you do read some of the books and you read of some of the terrible, terrible atrocities that were perpetrated on these young American soldiers that had dropped in, that were hanging from the trees, that were just about to cut themselves down out of their chutes and everything. Some of the things that were done to these young men by groups of these Nazis is as shocking an account of anything that you could possibly read. It truly, truly is disturbing. And you can kind of understand when somebody's blood's up in these kind of situations, particularly Bill Garnier, after losing his brother, as you said.
Yes, indeed. Well, after this scene, they kind of wander through the night, looking for people. Slowly dawn is upon us. You've got this wonderful shot. Now, this flooded marshland area, I want to say that that's Hatfield, but I might be wrong.
Again, I can't recall anything like that at Hatfield. Whether that was now that looks real, right? That looks real, and I would stake my life on it that is real. I don't think that's Hatfield.
So they had the body of water for the kind of the river, but kind of marshland sort of lake situation, maybe not.
No, it wasn't. No. I think it would be impractical and expensive to have done that.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a fake location. I was just wondered if that maybe that was marshland near.
Yeah, I mean, because I've been kind of chewing that one over myself, and I was watching this earlier on today, and I thought, could that possibly have been CG? Was that a location? And I kind of concluded that absolutely was a location. I don't think that was CG. But all I can say is it definitely wasn't Hatfield.
Well, it could have been. They shot in Ashdown Forest, and I don't know what scenes were filmed in Ashdown Forest, but there are some ponds and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that these shots could have been done there. But who knows? This is the area of Ashdown Forest where some shots for this episode were taken. Now, of course, it's predominantly golf clubs and country park hotels. This was probably Damien Winter's residence, or Damian Lewis's residence. I'm getting the names proper mixed up today. So but this would have been the sort of area that they would have shot in. But more of it was shot at Hurtwood. I'm going to show you that in a sec. So it's the next day. It's dawn of D-Day, and they get to what I'll call the water tower location. We see a water tower in the background.
I got a bunch.
Yeah, there's a good photo of that here as well. But yeah, do get that scene. Oh, you got it there. Lovely. Thank you. Yeah, that's French water towers are of a very specific design, and you can't go anywhere in France without seeing one of these. So I liked that detail. I liked that this detail was in.
Can I just quickly add something in?
Yeah, go for it.
That water tower is over here, and that water tower is also in the same location as that other shot that I mentioned. That's opposite that's near one of my local pubs. It's actually that water tower. I've actually got it on a document. Funny enough, I do have a document that actually describes the water tower at the location at Epping Green.
Wow.
So that's at Epping Green, is it?
That's at Epping Green.
Let's have a look and see if we can find it. Epping Forest, Water Tower, Epping Green. Yeah, I see. Is that the same one? It looks different to me.
It may have been dressed.
True. My God, this area has been severely built over since Band of Brothers. So this is Epping. The water tower in Epping. Where is it in relation to here?
It's right. So you have to look for a pub called the Traveller's Friend.
The Traveller's Friend.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can find it. Going down some right rabbit holes tonight, aren't we? But all in the aim of authenticity. Oh, for fuck's sake! My spelling. What's up with me? Traveller's Friend. High Road. Oh, there we go.
Right, so Epping Green is actually a very, very small area. It's
Right, hang on. You got one here in Woodford. I don't think it's that one. It's this one,
No.
right? Traveller's Friend permanently closed. Got to be that one.
Oh, right. Okay.
Damn, the pub's gone.
Pub's gone.
Well,
Damn.
it's hey, but it's near here, right? So
Yeah.
the water tower's near here, right?
Yeah.
So let's have a look. So that's the pub. Is that the pub you mean?
Yeah.
So where's the water tower in relation to that?
It's actually over the back in what used to be farmland but became green belt land.
Right. So north, south, east, or west from this?
So that would be, oh God, right, okay.
Putting you on the spot now. Earn your keep.
All right. I would say, right. I'm just trying to. I'm actually in my chair, just turning around in my chair, trying to establish my cardinal points of the compass. Right. Right. So where I am now,
we'll come back to this exciting piece of information shortly. Let's get back to the scene.
Yeah.
I
So
was gonna say, Lance, also the little piece of dialogue too. He was mentioning where winter is. He's like, man, he doesn't even drink. Just a small.
Ah, well, there you go. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why he doesn't trust.
Yeah, man doesn't drink.
I mean, this sequence is particularly moving because it's the one time where they come across somebody that could so easily be them.
Yeah.
And there's not only a dead paratrooper hanging, there are some dead cows.
Yeah.
There's some shot up German vehicles. There's some dead Germans and there's some dead Americans. So there's been a firefight here before they got here. Probably happened the night before. But this guy, of course, as Inside Man said, dead before he even hit the ground or didn't even get a chance to hit the ground.
Yeah.
Was probably shot where he hang. And Winters is able to achieve an American weapon as a result, because up until now he's got a German rifle, but he gets an M1 Garand again. And Lipton, very practical, just says, anyone need to stock up on ammo supplies? Now's your chance. And that's what they do. And they pillage the bodies for ammo and so forth.
Yeah. I thought that was a good scene. Also realistic. I mean,
very good scene.
Yeah, this isn't like movies or video games where you have like unlimited ammo. It's a resource.
And this is one of the American guys who's with them. I think this character's called Odell. And yeah, this is clearly the first time he's seen a dead paratrooper. Now, right, this shot here. Let's keep it on this. I'll tell you exactly where this was filmed. So, I'm fairly confident, and I might be wrong, but I'm fairly confident this is in the grounds of Hurtwood House, because this is the track that goes past a series of buildings in the episode. Those buildings are basically 3 derelict cottages and a barn that were on that piece of land, which worked perfect for this sequence as a kind of Normandy dwellings, whatever you want to call them. But now they've actually been completely rebuilt, and they're actually luxury cottages to rent. So they don't look anything like this now in real life. I think we'll probably be able to get a shot of them if we run part of the episode. I thought I had them in a still, but I may not. Anyway, well, you can see. If I show you this still, we'll be jumping ahead, so I don't want to show you that.
Right.
But no, you're fine on that. But this is where they are. So this is Hurtwood House, which is what I went to visit. This whole section, Holmbury Hill, is where part of what Centurion was filmed, where they built the Roman fort on top of the hill. And I think it's been used in a couple of other movies as well. So this track along here where it says Surrey Hill Cottages, those are the buildings from this scene, but they've all been completely refurbished now. So, but they were all along here. So this is where this stuff was shot, and you can see some of them in the background of this shot, for example, and so on. One of the things that's interesting is you see that they've actually erected a barricade of dead horses across the road to make a horsey roadblock.
I see those sleds. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty grim right there. And all the bodies are chained together and shit.
Yeah, but that was a pretty good shot.
Yeah. So, just prior to this scene, Malarkey passes a load of German prisoners, and he makes a flippant comment to one of them, and it turns out that the guy's actually an American, but his parents were from Germany, and when war broke out, they returned to Germany. It turns out they grew up from each other, just streets apart. They know the same places, they know the same bars, and so on and so on. I thought this actor, I don't know who he is, but I thought he played this little role really well. Sort of sitting there thinking, how the fuck did I get here? Feeling quite despondent and sort of thinking, I'm kind of fighting for the wrong side here. And I mean, what happens next, of course, is conjecture, depending on who you believe. But as Malarkey is walking away from that, so let's not go too far ahead of this. He suddenly hears Spears goes past him. Yeah, let's hold on that shot there.
Yep. You can hear it there.
Seconds later, he hears a load of gunfire. We see Spears giving out cigarettes to the men, and then we hear a load of gunfire, and we can tell from the reaction on Malarkey's face, which is on the image here now, that he has executed all those prisoners, or most of them. And then there are one of the things that's really interesting, which we'll pick up later, is the variation stories of the rumor mill, the variations of this tale. Like, it starts off that he killed 4 prisoners, then somebody else says it was 20. Somebody else says, well, he killed everybody but one, and he left one alive. And then somebody else says, no, it wasn't Spears. Spears was there, but it was another guy who actually fired at them. And I thought that was really good that they included that, because it showed how you can never really be sure of what the truth is unless you were there.
That's right. I mean, it kind of becomes apocryphal, doesn't it? It's, somebody said that they heard it from some guy who heard it from some guy whose friend was there, and all that kind of stuff. However, there's a book, oddly enough, Dale Dye has written the foreword for it, or the introduction to this book. It's called Fierce Valor, and it's all about Spears. It's an interesting book. Does kind of retread some of the old ground that the other books have already covered, but it does cover that incident, and it turns out it was true. It was 100% true. Maybe not necessarily how it's portrayed in the show, but it is true.
Yeah.
True in the sense that somebody executed them, or true in the sense that
Sense
Spears?
that Spears executed them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that also comes from Spears' family as well.
Damn.
Right.
So yeah, here's right here.
I mean, does he say why?
Damn.
It's very difficult because we have to be in their mindset. We can't say whether we would have done that or not.
No, absolutely, because you don't know what Spears has seen in his first 24 hours. He might have seen a load of Germans mow down a load of his own men. You just don't know, do you?
Yeah, and of course there is that that comes from the the high ups that says we are not going to be taking any prisoners. It's as simple as that. We cannot afford to take any prisoners, and certainly in the first 24 hours we can't.
Yeah. Well, indeed. So they come back to headquarters. We're a little bit ahead there.
Right there. I still like that look in his face, like,
yeah,
like, boy.
And we have shots of various characters. So we see Buck. We know Buck's made it. Let's hold there for the moment. And we see a couple of other people we've seen. Somebody's running around looking for Mian. And then they're looking for the person in charge of Easy Company. This guy's running around. Anyone seen Easy? Anyone seen Easy? Winters now realizes that because Mian is missing and no one's seen him at the minute, he's in charge of Easy Company. So they go before Major Strayer and they get told that there's a German artillery position, 4 to 6 guns, and they're bombarding Utah Beach. And it's going to be difficult for tank support to reach them unless these guns are taken out. So they want volunteers. Hall is keen to go with them, even though he's not part of Easy. And the others kind of berate him for wanting to come along, which felt a bit unfair to me. They're like, don't you want to go back to your own unit? And then Private Lorraine, who is the guy who's running around looking for Easy, is played by an actor. This is a really interesting tidbit that I picked up called Simon Fenton. And Simon Fenton started acting very young. Now, for an extra cookie, does anyone know what's one of Simon Fenton's, without looking it up on IMDb, because that would be cheating, what one of his very first acting roles was?
You see, I actually really do know that name, and for the life of me, I'm kind of trawling through my my grey matter at the moment.
There's a picture of him on IMDb for this episode. Let me find it. There's definitely a picture of him. I saw it. Funny enough, by the way, those are also the cottages that were rebuilt. So that's not Hatfield, this location. So this is when they're talking about the attack. Liebgott is there. And this is people volunteering for the attack. And there's Hall in the middle. There's our German who is executed. I'm sure there's a picture of Lorraine. I'm sure I saw him. This is all stuff from the attack, of course. We're coming up to that in a sec.
Yeah.
I'm sure I saw Lorraine. There he is, Simon Fenton. So Simon Fenton, in the film The Power of One, he played the young version of PK, the main character, who was the older version of him was played by Stephen Dorff, who of course is the bad guy in the Blade movie. So yeah, so that's the young PK from The Power of One.
Right.
Yeah, which is quite it's quite an unusual, and he plays this sort of nervous private called Lorraine who takes part in the attack. Now when I first watched this episode, it was a live broadcast on television, BBC Two, they showed them both on the same night, episodes 1 and 2, one after the other. I thought I got him and Hall mixed up because Hall goes to say, I'm going to take part in the attack, and the others kind of say no, and Winters kind of shrugs at him as if, okay, well, I guess you're not coming then. And this guy is the nervous guy that's running about, and I thought he was the one who ran into the grenade when I first watched it. I mean, obviously, I video recorded it and I rewatched it again immediately, but it just goes to show how difficult it was sometimes to follow who was who.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, it was a very fast-paced, frenetic episode. And it was, this is why this show, in particular this episode, does require another watch. Because there is so much to take in. There are so many minor things, so many tiny little things, as you said about Sergeant Evans. Those little things that you don't necessarily take in the first watch, or maybe even the second, third, or fourth.
I don't think I ever picked up on that until this watch. I mean, I've probably seen this. This is probably the 20th time I've watched Band of Brothers, and I completely missed that. I guess it's because now I'm looking out for things I've not seen before. So Winters outlines a plan of attack. They decide to go and attack Breakout Manor. Here he is outlining the plan of attack. And they're basically going to put down a base of fire, do a flanking move, standard kind of tactical stuff, as Dale Dye was demonstrating previously. This actor here, by the way, who's cocking his weapon, that's a very well-known British actor who does a lot of television, plays cops mainly. I forget his name, but this is one of the main episodes he appears in. Doesn't have a lot of dialogue in the show throughout, but he does pop up more than once. And again, I didn't pick up on who he was when I first watched the show because he doesn't get a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of famous people in this that have, very little dialogue, really. Yeah. So they go and attack Breakout Manor. They move through this kind of allotment area. You've got this ruined car, which was actually there. That did exist. That kind of knackered car was there. One of them sets up position in the car. Lipton goes up in a tree, which he did actually do. This is all as it happened.
Yeah.
And they set themselves up in position, ready to take out one of the German MG nests. And the attack happens. Now, up to this point, apart from Saving Private Ryan, we'd never really been in the midst of a battle where somebody had kind of filmed it with big long takes. You're with steady cam. You're in the midst of it all going off. Quite a few things happen immediately as soon as the attack begins. Popeye gets shot in the arse. Joe Toy is nearly killed by a German grenade, which turns out to be a dud. Then Buck goes to throw another grenade, which he fumbles, which nearly kills Joe Toy again. And he's like, Jesus Christ, fucking twice, which is a really great moment in the movie. Should we play a sequence of this?
I found the card sequence right here. There you go. Yeah. This Lance are setting everything up.
This is just as they're setting everything up. Yeah.
Yeah.
As we say, that car did really exist. Yeah. These are Czech guns, aren't they? They're so they're taken from the Russian front, probably from Poland or Czechoslovakia. A lot of the equipment, the static defense stuff, was all taken from other countries.
Go forward here.
Yeah, let's get to the bit when they're actually attacking.
Yeah, this is definitely said. This is almost a 15-minute action sequence.
Yeah,
there's a lot.
Well, we're not going to play all 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Always a Citroen 2CV, Absolutely. When in doubt, there is no substitute. Now, this Breakout Manor set with the trenches and everything inside, man, I'm guessing that this was probably at Hurtwood in one of the fields there.
I don't know. I really do not know.
According to resources I've been able to find out, it wasn't at Hatfield. So it was at one of the Surrey locations. I'm just not exactly sure which one.
There we go.
I mean, like I say,
Up in the tree.
Lipton up in the tree.
Yeah. It's just a lot going on.
This whole sequence is extremely fluid. Notice how desaturated the image is.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, it's not quite black and white, but it's like like the very early color footage that came out at that time. Oh yeah, this guy goes for his gun. He gets taken out.
Yep.
Yeah, and then his gun jams, and somebody else.
I'm guessing it had to be squibs too, probably.
Yeah, a lot of practical effects, no CGI.
Yeah.
Were you here on any of these days, Inside Man, for this?
Yeah. But like I say, this was all the East Grinstead location, so it was. Whichever the specific location was, we all had it down in call sheets as East Grinstead,
right?
Because of its proximity to East Grinstead. It obviously wasn't exactly within East Grinstead, but it was in the area of, which is obviously in Surrey.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we had there were days where we would all have to meet up sort of like, I don't know, sort of 5 o'clock in the morning in just outside Charing Cross Station, and there'd be a coach to take us all down to the location. And on one occasion, I think we were coming up to shooting the end of the episode. And it was a Friday. We got halfway to the location and the fucking coach broke down.
Oh no.
So there's about 60 of us on board this coach. A lot of guys with Mohicans, with Mohawk haircuts.
Yeah.
And we're just sitting there, sort of on the hard shoulder, just waiting for a replacement coach to turn up. And of course, we turned up really late. We actually turned up beyond lunchtime, so it was about sort of 1:30, something like that. Shot a quick scene. Hung around till about 5 o'clock, and then we wrapped.
Did they let you have some lunch?
Yeah. I mean, we literally got straight off the coach, straight into wardrobe, and then straight onto the lunch. I think we kind of had the leftovers, really. But
yeah.
I will just say one thing about the caterers on this: they were just amazing, absolutely amazing caterers.
Well, I mean that's always a benefit, isn't it? When the food when the food's good.
Yeah, I actually got about 3 stone, I think, when we were shooting this. So yeah.
So the firefight for Breakout Manor is pretty brutal. The Germans get so confused at one point, they end up firing on each other. Malarkey is one of the many men who's keen to get a Luger. So for some reason, he goes running out. He thinks he's seen one. Goes running out into the middle of this field to get it. Apparently, this did really happen. He did do this. And I need to find that it's a flare pistol.
Yeah.
And they don't fire at him initially because the Germans think he's a medic.
Yep.
Which is a pretty funny scene. And that's a good sequence.
In reality, I think in reality that was actually a sighting system, like a sight scope or something,
right?
And it was a case with all these kind of like sights and little bits and pieces and tools and what have you in it.
Yeah, that's the bit where he fumbles the grenade.
Yeah,
fumbles his own grenade, and it's like, get out! Yeah. Damn.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the part where he's doing that serpentine. It's a pretty good run. Find there.
It's well, it's it's so well directed. This
really
whole
is. Yeah.
sequence. Who was the director on episode 2?
Oh, now you're asking.
I am. No, that's all right. We can find out soon
Don't
enough.
know.
Because it wasn't. I don't think it was Steven Spielberg.
No.
In fact, I'm not sure he directed any. Did he?
No, he
direct?
didn't. No,
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 I
he
don't
didn't
think he
direct
directed any. Yeah. So episode 2 was directed by. Scores a 9.1 on IMDb. Richard Loncrane.
That's it. That's the one. Richard
Yeah,
Loncrane.
Richard Loncrane. So for those people who don't know, Richard Loncrane he directed Richard III with Ian McKellen. He also directed The Gathering Storm, which is a great film.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Albert Finney's portrayal of Winston Churchill, much better than the Winston Churchill we got in The Ministry of Non-Gentlemanly Warfare. Oh my God, terrible Churchill. And he directed Bellman and True, which I just bought recently, actually. So that's interesting. And he is still around. Should try to get him, shouldn't I? I should try to get him on. So he directed Wimbledon as well.
Yeah. Did he also direct? Was it Richard Loncrane who directed Gods and Monsters?
That might be right. I'm not sure. What year did that was that early 2000s?
It might be late 90s.
That's the one with Ian McKellen, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not on his IMDb.
Wasn't
so? Maybe he wrote it.
If anybody watching hasn't seen that version of Richard III, I would really recommend it. It's absolutely just an absolute masterpiece. It's fantastic.
Yeah, with Ian McKellen as but it's great. Really good stuff. So so we have this mad, very frenetic, high-paced battle that the likes of which we'd really not seen on television before. We've kind of seen it in Saving Private Ryan. It's really fast and brutal. Judy Hopps is saying it's still taught at West Point. That is absolutely true, because it was the perfect assault on a fixed enemy position.
If you want, Lance, I got the scene where he was doing his running. It's like, he must be a medic. Like, he's going to need a medic. Boy, that's awesome.
Yeah, those the guns that they had, the props inside, man. Do you remember? Were they metal?
I believe there was a couple of metal ones, but I think that one that has its when you see the barrel kind of sort of banana skin,
yeah.
A really well rigged up rubber sort of rubberized gun. I just love the way that looks. And obviously there's kind of a release mechanism on there, so as soon as the charge goes off, the release mechanism activates, and of course it sort of releases, and all the pieces kind of fly out in the direction that they're actually molded in. So they're actually molded as that kind of split barrel, and then they just pull them back together. So they're pulled back together, they're held, and then the release mechanism just ding, and it opens up. Brilliant. Such a clever practical effect. Very, very basic, but very, very smart.
This is the moment where this guy crawls out to Lipton and he's like, "I'm looking for battalion headquarters." He's like, "Are you kidding?" And then he sticks his head up too high and boom, he's shot. He's dead. We never really find out who this guy was or why he was there. It's a pretty mad, intense moment. During the assault on the next gun, It's never quite clear to me whether Hall got killed by his own grenade, or by somebody else's grenade, or by a German grenade. And I was trying to work that out when I rewatched it. All we know is that he runs into a bunker and there's an explosion.
Yeah.
But we don't know, and it's obviously a grenade, but we don't know. It's not a booby trap, because you wouldn't have your own bunker booby trapped, because it was only manned seconds earlier. So, you know, it wouldn't. So it's either that somebody threw in a grenade ahead of him, and that happens again in episode 10 or 9, I think, or one of the Germans chucked in a grenade into the bunker, knowing it was being assaulted to defend. So, you know, or he threw his own grenade in and ran in too fast. I don't really know. But yeah, he dies, and it's a good moment, because this is technically the first man who has died under Winter's command, even though it's not one of his men.
Yeah.
It's nicely done in the. It's nicely played, that whole sequence, I thought, in the episode. Yeah, it's a TNT, and then someone says Hall, because Hall brought the TNT. He turns up out of nowhere and suddenly has the TNT to blow the guns, even though he wasn't going to come on the mission. And Lipton turns up with it later and is like, Hall. So then Spears arrives with his guys, and they decide to take out the next gun. And Spears just like, everyone thinks he's going to get killed. He just charges up like a mad fucker and just steams straight in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one of those MG42s on my set as well.
I just love these stills lands, because like right there, just how authentic. Like, he's actually wearing all the ammo. It's probably prop ammo, but it looks so real. It's attention to detail. Oh my god.
Yeah, no, I mean, everything about, like, from the camo pattern on the German artillery.
Like how he's feeding the ammo too.
Yeah.
It's, you know.
Yeah.
Man.
It's all so well done. And some of these shots are really long, which just adds to the realism, like you're actually there. You know, it doesn't feel like this choreographed film sequence. It just feels like you're actually there. Sound design as well, incredible. So they there's that line where when Malarkey comes back, Garnier says, "You stupid Mick." Winters finds maps. He finds maps with German artillery positions all over Normandy. Spears arrives, takes out the next gun, and then ultimately they've taken out all the guns and they head back to Battalion HQ.
It's the next one.
Yeah. So this is when they've come back. I think it's this one, right?
No, it's the next one. Slide 2. Right there.
This one. Yeah. So as they arrive back in the town, the first tanks have come from the beach. So this road here, this track here, these are the cottages on the left of the vehicles, and you'll see there's also a barn, I think, on the right. This is the track that I saw, and it's interesting that it's muddied with red. And I remember when I visited this location, if you look at that wall, this is how kind of detailed and finicky I get about when I look at a location to film. See the bricks, see the brickwork on that building. I remember going, oh, those breeze blocks, they look a bit modern, that stonework. Because actually, if you're at that location and you see them, some of them are so straight, they just don't look like they would have been made in the 1940s. And I was like, oh, yeah, how did this pass on Band of Brothers? But the buildings were a lot more knackered back then. They've all been refurbished since.
Like Judy Hopps' comment.
Now I have to watch the whole series again.
Oh, it's Chimney Gates.
You're right.
Yeah, very visceral battle sequence, Professor R2. It is extremely well done. So, yeah, first tanks arrive and Lieutenant Nix is on one. So now I have an inside man question coming up. and he's going to say, "I've no idea," which is you're not allowed to say that next time.
Okay.
No, so we cut from this location right here. Okay.
Uh-huh.
This is kind of on location in a village somewhere. I can't work out if it's part of the set that we see later in other episodes at Hatfield, or if it's actually somewhere else.
I've no idea.
Fucking you were going to say that.
No, I mean, I would.
This shot might help you if you look at it from this perspective. That's the truck that he goes in when all the guys are cooking. Winters is wandering around. These are the streets. I think this is actually part of the set in Hatfield. It's just shot at night. We're at one particular part of that set. And it's easy for it to be dressed as anywhere.
This is Hatfield.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. I thought it was Hatfield. Yeah, because that looks like that track which those trucks are on, and you can see it's going up. It's a slope. I think that's probably part of the track that goes up the road on the Carentan set. And then this square and all the rest of it is redressed and is used in quite a few other. That's what I thought it was. So this is one part.
Yeah, because the architecture is it's the French architecture, isn't it?
This memorial shot is very nice. I assume that they probably built that. It's probably a prop, and it's probably on the Hatfield set somewhere. And the men are all kind of chilling out. I mean, this is where everyone's talking. Malarkey drops a big Hummer inside the truck. First use of chemical warfare in World War II.
I love that line. We know about cooking. You're Irish.
Yeah. He jumps out the truck to escape Malarkey's fart radius. And then Malarkey's cooking up this food.
Someone dying here.
And then Winters sticks his head in and grabs the bottle. And this is such a good moment.
Yeah.
Where because he sees that Garnier's drinking alcohol. He takes the bottle.
Lieutenant don't drink.
Somebody says the lieutenant doesn't drink. Yeah, Joe, the lieutenant doesn't drink. And he says, "It's been a day of firsts," and downs it.
Yep.
And sort of looks right Garnier, and Garnier nods. It's been a day of firsts for both of them. And I thought that was a really good moment. And it showed that there's now that respect between them. Very clever.
Yeah.
So we then kind of...
I don't like to. Not a Quaker.
Yeah, he's not a Quaker. That's my favorite line of the episode, by the way.
He's probably Mennonite.
They're all trying to guess. So then we have this little scene with Nix where he tells him the map had every Kraut gun in Normandy on it. How they know this already, I think, is a bit suspicious. He talks about Hall, the guy that he lost under his command. Nix says he doesn't know who he is. He says, "You do know who he was. He was on the basketball team." And that behind them, you can see that's the main town Hatfield set, isn't it?
This all is
yeah. And then we go. It kind of goes into a voiceover with Winters talking.
I love that line right there, Lance. Not even old enough to buy it. He's like, man, wasn't even old enough to buy a beer.
Yeah. In America.
Yeah.
You can buy a beer in England because we like to get our youth drunk early.
Yeah.
So
I love this scene. I just share that shot.
Now that's a great shot, and I think it's implied that is the town of Carentan.
Yeah.
Which is been bombed and was heavily bombed, and there's fighting going on there already, because of course some people actually dropped around there. So he there's a little voiceover. It's like he's almost writing in his diary. And he says he makes the promise with him that if he survives the war, he's going to find a little farm somewhere. in the middle of nowhere and live there in peace, kind of thing.
I kept that. I promised God myself. Yeah, boy.
So I now I remember it because I meant to say this on the stream last. I won't name the actor, but a friend of mine has got a story about their Band of Brothers Winters casting, and I'll tell you that story now. But just to sum up the ending of the episode, it finishes with
right there.
Yeah, these credits about who was awarded what for the attack on Breakout Manor.
I thought that was very important, and also right there, as I said.
Yeah.
Still to this day.
And by the way, I've been to Breakout Manor, and there is no manor house at Breakout Manor. Just so you know, it's just a lot of fields. So
just one thing to add to all of this, and that is the fact that Richard Winters was recommended the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Right.
But they only permit one Congressional Medal of Honor winner per unit. And he was overlooked in favor of somebody else. So he wasn't awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor.
So somebody else.
It was recommended.
So somebody else in the 506 or somebody else in the 101st Airborne also got it.
Somebody else in the 506th.
Oh, right. That's
in the 506th.
Well, we'll find out who that is while we're on air.
It's actually documented in the Screaming Eagles, D-Day with the Screaming Eagles, I think is the book.
Right.
So it's mentioned in that.
Well, we should be able to find out because there can't have been that many Medal of Honors on, do they?
No.
So the story my friend told me is like we were talking about Band of Brothers. And he said, "Lance, have I not told you my Band of Brothers casting story?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "Well, I was up for the part of Dick Winters, and I mean this actor's quite a well-known actor. He's got good credits. And before anybody asks, no, it's not Jason Fleming. And I said, no, tell me. And he said, right, well, I was going out with a girl who worked in casting at the time. And she was the assistant to the casting director, the UK casting director for Band of Brothers. And he went in 3 times, and he got seen by Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, and he had really good audition, fantastic audition. And on the day of the recall, his girlfriend, who was, I think, had stayed over when he got the call about the recall in the morning, she made the mistake of saying to him, well, look what I've got. And she showed him a photocopy of the final list of names, and there were 4 people on that list, and 2 of the people on that list had several massive asterisks next to them. In other words, these are the favorites.
Yeah.
One of whom was Damian Lewis, and the other one of whom was my friend. And she said, see, look, you're going to get this. And because she showed that to him right before he went in, he fucking lost all of his confidence. It put all this pressure on him. And he said he did the worst recall audition he'd ever done. And he said he lost his accent. And afterwards, they actually said to him, what happened? I nearly said his name then. What happened, Dave Smith? Not his name. What happened, Dave? And he was like, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm just, having a bad day. And in the end, they didn't cast him. And not only did he not get Damien Winters, he didn't get cast at all. And he was up, that would have, obviously it's a career changing role, that role. So yeah, he said his epitaph to that story was, needless to say, me and that girlfriend didn't last much longer.
I'll tell you who else was up for one of the roles, and he left. I'm not sure if I should mention his name. I might tell you afterwards, but
You can't put
let's
that out there and not tell us now.
okay. Well, he's um, Sid Owen.
Oh, I think I heard this.
Yeah, he was up for one of the roles, and he was doing very, very well apparently. And he really was going to be one of the maybe not one of the major characters, but he was definitely up for a role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did he get offered at Enders around that time and took it instead, or what
No,
happened?
this was one of the reasons that he took a little bit of a hiatus from EastEnders because he was still in EastEnders at the time.
Right.
So he was on a bit of a hiatus, and he wanted to kind of spread his wings. But I believe that he got very, very far, much like your friend. Um, yeah, so he was very much a confirmed consideration.
But what? Why didn't it? What happened? Why didn't he?
Don't know,
Right.
just do not know. Um, Actually, I've got a little bit of a story about this episode.
Yes. Tell us.
um,
Tell us all the
right,
stories.
and it involves Captain Dale Dye, and
Yeah.
what it was. Um, we were actually just shooting the end of the episode, so it's the part of the episode where the tanks are going by. There's tanks and trucks and everything. There's a few sort of dead cows, and the camera sort of cranes up and pulls back. Right.
Yeah.
So apparently there was a little bit of a rehearsal going on with the vehicles, and Dale Dye was standing sort of on the side of the muddy track on a little sort of raised mound of earth. And as the Shermans were going past, the rumble of the tanks caused this little mound of earth to suddenly collapse, and Dale Dye um, fell in front of one of the Shermans as it was rolling along, and he
Ooh,
literally just stood up, brushed himself off, and see, I never saw this, but everybody who saw it came up and said, "Fuck, you're not going to believe what nearly happened. Captain Dye nearly got squashed by a Sherman."
right.
And everybody was talking about it, and
Right.
I missed it. I wasn't there at the time for this, and it was only about 100 yards away from me. And you could hear the kind of audible sort of yells and fucks,
Stop the
and when
vehicle.
yeah, and when everybody come back, that everyone was talking about it, and yeah, all he did, as cool as a cucumber, he just got up out from between these two Shermans as they were rolling along, and just brushed himself off, and the Sherman just rolled past him. So he was
Right.
literally inches away from the tracks of a Sherman tank.
It's interesting to note that Gerald Lorraine, so the guy that was like portrayed really nervously
Hmm.
by our man Mr. Fenton, he was one of the guys that got a silver star.
Wow.
Um, so that's pretty interesting. And but they show him like as a really bad shot, not
Yeah.
not not hitting anybody.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean it's a really good episode. It sets the scene.
Yeah.
Action is incredibly well
Hmm.
directed. It's really really well done.
I
Um,
think it's actually when I watch this episode, and I've seen this episode like yourselves time and time and time again. I think this episode really is a thing of beauty. I think it's a beautiful thing to watch. As ugly as war is, but it's so beautifully shot. Um, as you say, sonically as well. The sound effects and everything, the sound design in it is just amazing. The acting is completely faultless, um, but it's the writing. Now I'm going to go back to John Orloff.
mm,
This was first, his first paid writing job. This was his first screenplay that he has had on the screen, the
right.
first one. And for your very first job, what an effort! I mean, but what's even weirder is that every single one of the writers, whether it be Eric Chandrason, Eric Bork, Graham Yost, and John Orloff, none of them were in a, uh, a writer's room. None of them were consulting each other. None of them,
No, right, yeah.
not one of them.
Mm.
And they were just given the brief for the episode and the information for the episode, and what needed to be conveyed and everything. And I think John Orloff absolutely outdid himself on this. I think it's a magnificent script. It's the shortest of the episodes, but it feels like it's twice as long because
Yeah, I
there's
can see
so
that.
much in there.
Yeah.
He's put so much information in this episode that it's hard to digest it, in one sitting. But he's done it amazingly. He's distilled everything about that day from the jump right the way through to the end of Breakout Manor. I mean, everything has been distilled so perfectly. Um, and I think it's a masterclass in writing this. I really do. I think it's an absolute masterclass because it's
Oh
the
yeah.
it's a perfect show don't tell episode.
Yeah.
The dialogue is quite limited.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to. You don't have to have that overt character development with the dialogue because we've already had the character development with Karahi episode 1.
Mm.
Um, I just think he's really, really, really outdone himself on this. It's just a masterclass in screenwriting.
So, funnily enough, I forgot to break it down accordingly, but we'll talk about some of these things now.
The first and finest company in this regiment.
Each trooper will learn this operation by heart.
So, in terms of the story and the history of this episode, which essentially is the invasion of D-Day, plus the assault on Breakout Manor on June the 6th, pretty accurate from what my own research has been able to determine. The assault on the guns is pretty accurate from all the accounts that I've read. The various things that happen on D-Day, very accurate. Does anyone have any comment that they want to offer on those elements?
Well, in terms of its accuracy, I think this is probably one of the most accurate pieces of TV anywhere that you're likely to see. As I said, it's because there's so much information to be distilled into, into like a 54, 56 page script. He's done such an amazing job of getting all of that in there. And it is really in a lot of the tiny details. Just, one line, there might be one line that will basically tell you an entire story. And he's put those single lines in there.
Yeah.
I just think it's amazing, amazingly accurate, an amazing piece of writing from an amazing writer.
I cannot disagree. Blue, anything to add to that?
No, well, it's also about like having whenever we have a history bro on, because like history is one of the things where I always feel like we're still learning more. It's every time I think I know something about World War II, something else comes out I didn't know, and because Gary was just saying there's so much to unpack with that war and so many untold stories about it, and it's like how much is historical accurate besides you, because none of us were there, but we're reading documents and accounts, and I mean we have to hope that these people, they seem like they're doing their homework, the books and all accounts, so it seems as accurate as anything I've ever seen.
Yeah. Lorraine, by the way, was also got the Silver Star on Market Garden as well.
Fair play.
I've dropped a link to his little bio in the chat so people can check that out.
It's funny. It's funny what Blue was saying about the responsibility. that these writers have to convey this story as accurately as possible. And it's
Mm.
absolutely true. I think there's no better word than responsibility, and it's an incredibly responsible job that you have if you're going to tell these kinds of stories, and you have to tell them accurately. And this is where HBO, God bless them, have allowed the writers and producers to run with it. They've allowed
Hmm.
them to run with the show and to give everything they possibly can. No agenda, um, no, nothing. It's just literally tell that story then. That's a great story. Please tell
Yeah.
us that story. Please give us that story. Whereas, on the flip side of that, we have other companies, um, named after a fruit, um, that will maybe not necessarily give you or give the filmmakers, the producers, and the writers the kind of freedom that they
Yeah.
need to have to to um, to retain that responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Mentioning no companies in
This is good.
particular.
Here, this is like Jim Beam apple flavor.
Oh,
It's
that's
delicious.
purely a coincidence. All right, let's talk about the characters and the cast in this episode. So we do meet a few people. We get to know a few people a bit more. There are some people we get to know, I would say, we haven't really seen.
Mm.
Popeye Wynn is one of them, who's played by Nicholas Aaron. I'm going to put the IMDb page up now. Patrick Green is the name of the actor that I couldn't remember earlier, who I said he's been in loads of British stuff.
Mm.
Adam James. I'm getting everything back to front today. And Adam James was recently in the Post Office Scandal TV drama. He played.
Right.
He played Patrick Green, the lawyer, in that. Yeah. So he was. Adam James is quite a small role. Nolan Hemmings, we've already talked about. Craig Heaney played Cobb, who gets wounded in the plane. We're going to get to know more about him later. He's quite bitter about the fact that he didn't get to drop on D-Day, which is quite funny. Phil Baranti playing Skinny Sisk in this episode, now a director, of course, in his own right. Kirk Acevedo, who plays Joe Toy, really like him as Joe Toy.
Yeah.
He really stands out. All the characters kind of playing the Italians seem to kind of stand out in this show.
The Italians and the Irish.
Yeah. They really, and yeah, Scott Grimes, he's great.
Great actor.
Now, I've heard Scott Grimes is really nice in real life. Can you confirm?
Yes, he is.
Oh, great. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
There are some people I could point out I've heard different things about, but I'm not going to say.
Mm.
This is really, you could kind of argue this is Winters and this is Hall's episode, Andrew Scott.
Yeah.
And
Garnier's, I'd say. We have that kind of little revelation, that little kind of turning point in that relationship, don't we?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking, who is the standout performer for this episode for me?
Mm.
And I have to say, it's probably a toss-up between Malarkey, because I really like this scene.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Malarkey's reaction to what happens.
Yeah.
Here. And then Garnier's little narrative arc in this episode is very strong as well. So probably down to the two of them for me, I think. But I'll come back to that shot in a second. I want to bring that up next. So Ross McCall will kind of become more forefront later.
Yeah, I do like Ross. I really, I'm a big admirer of his work. I really, really like.
Well, he's
him
just
as a-
directed. He's just directed his first feature film with Craig Fairbrass. I was at the UK cast
Oh,
and crew
fair play to him. Well done.
screening of that,
Yeah, that's great. That's
and
yeah.
he's based out in LA permanently now.
Yeah.
So for his sins, but yeah, I think it's hard to. I mean, I think Frank John Hughes probably steals this episode
Yeah.
as Garnier, but him and Scott Grimes
he's
really do make their
yeah.
mark.
I mean, he is. I think Frank John Hughes. Much like Matthew Settle as well. These are a pair of actors that when they're there, they really hold you.
Yeah,
Frank John Hughes, I think, is a really compelling actor. And he's also he's the kind of guy that you really would like to have as a good mate. He's that kind of bloke. You
yeah.
kind of think, yeah, I'd really like to have you as a mate.
You want him backing you up
Um,
in the pub.
yeah, and he's a very, very endearing, person in real life as well. He is an incredibly endearing person, apart from being an incredibly talented actor. Um, Matthew Settle, I think, another one. He really kind of holds your attention, whichever scene he's in.
Yeah,
But he is quite ubiquitous because even when he's not in a scene, even when he's not maybe dominating an episode or dominating a scene, you still feel that he's there. You feel that Spears is still around.
he's quite Matthew Settler, the actor, is quite reserved in real life. From what
I
I've seen.
found him very, very. I actually found him very smiley, very kind of happy.
I remember in the making of, he had trouble getting in the country, and he kind of got held back at customs with one of the
Oh
production
God,
scenes.
yeah. That's right.
Yeah, so,
I think didn't he bring a knife in or something? Had a knife.
no. That's a rumor. There was an issue with his visa. That's an old wives' tale. He didn't bring a knife with him.
No, I heard something on set.
His visa wasn't something about his visa
Yeah,
work
but
wasn't
but
stamped.
there was something going around on set that somebody actually had brought a knife with them, and it was an old military knife that they
That
wouldn't
probably
use.
became like another Spears myth.
Yeah,
It's got to have been Spears. Yeah, so hard to choose one, but if you had to choose out a standout character for the episode, Blue, who would you, or actor, who would you pick? You're muted, mate.
So yeah, I would say definitely Winters. I mean, he's got the best scenes in the episode.
Well, I mean, it is a Winters episode.
Yeah,
but we see lots of Winters. I mean, I'm probably gonna say Frank John Hughes for me. And I mean, it's hard to it's hard to say one, but Scott Grimes as well.
yes.
Okay.
It is difficult when you know that this is although we know that there is a lead, it feels very much like an ensemble, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have talked about the effects footage at the beginning.
Tonight, we're gonna have to cross the river.
These crowds are gonna catch some hell.
Both practical and digital. So we won't go over all of that again. Needless to say, the effects are really good. Shout out to Angus Bickerton, who I have asked to come on the channel, by the way. He used to work with Alan Marks, and they knew each other very well. But and I have met him way back in the day, but I haven't heard anything from him, sadly. Oh man, this is a hard one to call. What would you say are your?
Remember what you were taught? I guarantee you, gravity will take care of the rest.
I mean, my favorite line is definitely "I'm not a Quaker."
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Blue, you got a favorite line?
mean,
And
I don't know.
in chat, what are your favorite lines from this episode? In terms of favorite moments, I mean, it's hard, but I do like that first bit of that first firefight. Very brutal, very quick.
Yeah.
Ambush under the bridge is kind of okay. This is war. This is how it's going to be. We're not taking prisoners. This is kind of you know what you're in for with the rest of the episode. The extended fight, Breakout Manor, is amazing, of course. But
I think my favorite line, just because the way he looks at him, says, "Yeah, it's like I'm not a Quaker," and just that smile and just like that mutual respect. So besides him drinking, but just like I heard you say it, because it's like also he also said it too, like when he was behind them, like almost he thought he didn't hear it. Like, no, I heard you, dude.
Yeah, and it's because it kind of it nicely sort of bookends that episode as well, doesn't it? You know, it gives you that sort of from such a brutal opening to something that's slightly lighter and it's quite bonding, sort of a bonding moment, I think.
yeah. I mean, I'd give this episode 9.5 out of 10. Please give your ratings for this episode. Those people that are watching in the chat now, give us your marks out of 10. Blue, what would you give this episode?
Oh, definitely 10 out of 10. And something, I gotta tell you both you guys, it's when I was making the stills for this, sometimes this happens often where we've all seen different sequences or battle sequences or anything seem like they go on forever. And I timed it again. It's basically at the half-hour mark until 42 minutes, the whole battle sequence. It's only 12 minutes long. When I'm doing the stills, I could have swore, and in a good way, I thought it was like a 45-minute battle sequence. And, and I went back after doing the stills. I'm like, wait a second, this was only 12 minutes, and I felt like I watched a friggin' whole live action movie because
it's got a real stop-start rhythm to it. It's like fast. We've taken that gun. Bit of dialogue. Monarchy does something stupid. Then fast. Taking the next gun.
There's so much they do in just 12 minutes, and I'm like, and I went back. I'm like, wait, I could have swore that was a 45-minute sequence. I'm like, wow, that's how you film something. That right there for me alone was 10 out of 10.
So 10 out of 10 from you. Inside Man,
it's a solid 10 from me. I can't fault it. I just
39.5 out of 29.5 out of a score of possible 30 from the panel. Chat must be either asleep or not willing to commit to a score, because no one's put one in the chat yet, but we would like to hear what your scores are out of 10 before we go. Professor R2, 10 out of 10. Yeah, maybe I should give it a 10. I don't know what is the half that's missing for me. I don't think I'm going to give it a 10. I can't justify 9.5. I'm not sure that there is. Is there anything that could have been done better? Probably not. I
can't think of anything.
I might have wanted to see something with a French civilian. I would have quite liked one scene with a French civilian, somewhere, probably at the battalion headquarters. They would have been a civilian that was telling them where German positions were, which of course happened a lot. I want that mad Frenchman going past with "Hello, my friends, welcome, champagne for you all. I don't know if I have enough."
With a beret, a stripy hat, and a string of onions around his neck.
Well, maybe not quite that. He had a fireman's helmet on in Longest Day. Didn't like the Spears prison scene. War sucks. 10 out of 10 from Dan Candy. His unit presently engaged in the Civil War. Check out my gaming stream. I think. I mean, I'm really nitpicking. Judy Hopps is knocking a half off for the breeze blocks.
Don't you start.
Okay, we're going to get into chimney minutia.
Yeah, we're going to get into Belgian chimneys in a minute. Come on.
Yeah. It is absolutely one of them. So we're going to be doing episode 3 next week. It might be the same time. It might be Saturday at 8 o'clock, but it might also be Sunday. Sunday is the preferred day, but I have a bit of a clash on Sundays at the minute, which means I get back a bit late. So we will see. We will see next week. So just check out the channel because I will lock in the day at the latest by Thursday. At the minute, it's scheduled for Sunday, but just be aware it might move to Saturday. So just be aware of that. So final thoughts. Anyone want to say anything?
Oh, well, of all the criticism of Masters of the Air, um, I can absolutely say that the criticism of that was really no fault of John Orloff's, and it's no fault of the producers, and we know where the blame lies. I just wish that they had, done the same and stuck with HBO. We know that why they didn't, but this is this proves to me that John Orloff is a supreme writer, and Richard Loncraine is a supreme director.
Yeah.
And Tom Hanks, Tony Tow, and Steven Spielberg, really let these people run with this, and they did it with aplomb. And HBO, I just wish that we got more of this kind of stuff from HBO. It's a wonderful episode, and I cannot wait for the next one.
Yeah, because Tony Tow was also the main producer on the Pacific. He also worked with Hanks producing From the Earth to the Moon, which
that's right. Yes, he did.
That's a great miniseries. I really like that miniseries.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, God, he'd be a great guest if I'd be. He's still around, so
yeah, he is.
You never know. Getting on a bit, but he'd be good. It's someone great to get on. No, Drinker does want to do these. He's away with his family this weekend. Any time he's available, he'll be on. And History Bros should be back next weekend. So we should be back to our regular panel of 4 next weekend. And we will have Drinker on for, I think, probably 2 or 3 of these. Certainly, if he's not unconscious, indeed. I'm more worried about Blue falling unconscious during a stream.
No chance.
I can hold down like a Scotsman.
That's interesting that HBO isn't the same company anymore. Most people from this time have left. Yeah, I dare say some key people left for the fruit company. Again, we have no idea what you're talking about. I can't. There's not much I can say that hasn't been said. Really, it is one of the finest episodes of a television show ever.
Yeah.
Completely gripping, enthralling. It's got a 9.2 rating on IMDb, which is incredibly well deserved. Now there is something I want to. Before we go, I was looking at the reviews of Band of Brothers.
Oh boy.
And by the way, this is my favorite shot in the film. This is my favorite shot when they're going. They're walking through the marshes at night. You've got the burning.
I'm curious about reviews, from 10 years ago to 2024 reviews.
It's not so much that. So it's because I was interested to see. There's 1,000 reviews, which is on IMDb is good. You've got to be dedicated to. And most of them are all very. But I was curious to see what the criticisms were. And one person here, I understand why people rate it so high. A lot of the criticism is this is only an American narrative. So I understand that, but it is about the 101st. So, but this is an interesting one. So not so good. I was watching the series and I thought it was good. There was much talk of it being so realistic and based on true stories. Then there was the episode about the Netherlands and seeing the hills of Eindhoven. There's no hills in that episode. So, I mean, there's rolling countryside, but there's no hills. So I don't know.
There are dikes. I mean, they were.
Yeah, I think he's referring to the dikes, which are in it. But and they were like, their water defenses basically.
Yeah.
They were much more pronounced back then because they weren't as sophisticated as they are now. The boy who brought olives to the soldiers was just ridiculous, as were the peasants traveling in a Russian carriages. So this is all, okay. I don't know, but the stuff about the hills of Eindhoven is bollocks. So
Yeah.
if you're going to make a criticism, make sure it's correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's it.
so there was I read this one, which was saying it's over sentimental, etc. I mean, this clearly is just someone who didn't like it. But one of the things I thought, I had the problem with the role of the Europeans. If they appeared at all, it was in a vague and distant manner, more props than real persons. I think that's a fair criticism, actually. But it is a show about Easy Company. It's not a show about the European people that Easy Company met.
Yeah.
But I think that is a fair. I just said I would have liked to scene with a civilian. That's a fair criticism. But then there was he criticizes here. There was a foolish English tank commander who was blown to pieces by a tiger, despite being warned by the valiant Americans. Had he listened to them, he would still be alive. That is absolutely true. That happened. That is well documented. That guy ignored them. He actually said the line, "If I can't bloody see him, I can't shoot him." He refused to put a round into the Dutch house. And the reason for that was because the Dutch Irene Brigade, which were the Free Dutch, it was the Princess Irene Brigade. They were the royal household cavalry of the Dutch royal family, were part of 30 Corps. And whilst they were traveling with 30 Corps along with Dutch royalty nearby, they didn't want to be blowing up Dutch buildings in abundance. So there was a general
Absolutely
order.
correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
So, mate, do your research.
Yeah.
This did actually happen. That's why it's in the show.
Yeah.
This one says it's not very realistic at all. The Germans are almost without exception behaving as total amateurs. And then he goes on to give various examples. So the unit with the dikes, when it says, yet we're told these are SS soldiers, that unit that was shelled and during the dike attack, that's not a veteran SS unit. It's a Dutch SS unit, which is quite different. Press ganged into service, a lot of them.
I think they were the 15th SS Panzer Grenadiers, and they were. Yeah, you're right. A lot of
them by then were kids.
Yeah, a lot of them were kids, and that age-old thing. Children and old men. So they did actually have a lot of children and old men in there, a lot of young teenage boys and what have you. And let's not forget that there were an awful lot of Dutch Nazi sympathizers as well.
Yeah, there were.
But I agree with exactly what you're saying. That if you're going to criticize something and say that it's not historically accurate, first of all, know your history and then criticize it for being historically inaccurate. You cannot criticize something that is historically accurate if you haven't actually read the history of it.
Yeah.
You can't act on assumption that I believe that that's far-fetched because it looks far-fetched. That looks too outrageous to be true, so therefore it's not true. Read.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, it was interesting to read, but on the whole, as you can see, these are not AI reviews; these are real reviews.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see what people's gripes were, and generally, it was that it was an American narrative. The Europeans are largely ignored. Yanks won the war, etc. I can understand why people have a gripe about that. We all want to see more European shows made. Hey,
sure, yeah.
Preaching to the converted on that one. But it's.
But it's not. But it isn't that. It isn't that kind of. Oh yeah, the Yanks won the war for us and all that kind of stuff. We've got to be eternally grateful and all of that kind of narrative, right? What it is, it's a story about a very tiny, small microcosm of what happened during the war. This tiny little group of men. That's one microscopic story, and that's it may be part of a larger story, but it's one microscopic story. And if we want to make it too broad, then it's going to be a mess. We have to, you have to look at how film and TV is made to know that you can only focus on one small pocket at a time. And I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that they
Yeah.
did. And the same with the Pacific. Yeah, and many other great TV shows and war movies. When they do this, of course it's done from a particular perspective. It has to
Yeah.
be. You can't have a story told from you know 100,000 perspectives. There isn't a sweeping generalization of exactly what happened. Everybody's perception of any historical event is going to be different. And this is a perspective that's been or perspectives that have been collated by Stephen Ambrose and combined in a singular story, um, and distilled slightly more by the screenwriters and the directors. And I think their distillation of these stories is, I think they're masterpieces in television. I can't believe that we're 20 years on. Sorry, over. Well, for me, I mean, it's 24 years. Um, 24 years ago, we were shooting this. I can't believe that nearly a quarter of a century on, that people still have the same kind of love and affection and respect for this show that they had way back then. If anything, more so.
Yeah. I'll mention this one because this one's priceless. So yet another rewrite of history. Now this person is, but for me, the complete tosh surrounding Operation Market Garden is what killed this for me, especially as my father was part of British 30 Corps. Now, respect to you and your dad where that's concerned. So in the south, 101st met little resistance, captured 4 of the 5 bridges. That's true of their activity on the first day, yes. After a brief delay, blah, 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 blah. Small units of the 101st moved south to Sonne towards Eindhoven. Later that day, it contacted and was given attachment to the 44th Tank Regiment, elements of which were advancing. 101st did not liberate Eindhoven and did not have any contact with the British until General Taylor handed over control. That's not true. Several units of the 101st infiltrated the town of Eindhoven before 30 Corps got there. They didn't take control of the town, but they did infiltrate the town. They took out 2 AA guns on the north edge of Eindhoven. I've read every account of every action to do with Eindhoven, so I know what I'm talking about. You haven't also, Billy Big Bollocks, you haven't mentioned the battle for the Best Bridge, which was on the left flank, or it would have been I guess it's the west. 9 o'clock as the clock face goes, which was there was a massive German counterattack there, and the 101st lost I think it was nearly 250 guys defending the area around the Best Bridge and the heights above it. The battle that we see that takes place in Newman took place on a market garden. I think it was like 3 or 4 or 5 days in. And also the highway was cut, by the way, by the German forces twice and in 2 different places. Again, this is from the point of view of the 101st, and I would like to see a mini series about the Battle of Arnhem. I really would. But I just think to criticize the show for these things, which is incorrect, is nonsense.
And also, the episode that this person's referring to, episode 4, Replacements.
Which will come to in a couple of weeks.
But this is only the story of one company within the division.
Yeah.
this isn't. This is the company's story. This is following Easy Company's story. This isn't covering the 101st Airborne Division. This isn't even covering the 506
Yeah.
Parachute Infantry Regiment. This is one company.
Yeah.
And deal with it. That's what the show's about. It's about Easy Company. Deal with it. It's,
Well, that feels like a good place to wrap up. Blue, have you got anything you want to plug?
Not really. Just like hanging out with you and watching movies, and pretty much it.
Okay, well, I've got 2 interviews coming up on Monday. I am interviewing the director, Will Gilby of Jericho Ridge, which actually also coincidentally has my friend Nicky and Mooka Bird in it. This is a small independent film which I highly recommend people watch. It's kind of like a mini assault on Precinct 13. It's just got a really good script. I like the fact that it's a main female character, but she's not invincible. She's actually crippled, which is why she's got desk duty from a previous injury on the job. So you've got a woman who's highly deficient put in a really difficult situation.
Yeah.
And it gets pretty bad for her pretty quickly. And boy, does Will put his leading actress through hell in this film. So me and Northern Bastard are interviewing Will on Monday, 8:00 GMT. He is also the chap who he edited the first Rise of the Foot Soldier film. That's generally considered to be the best of that series. So we'll be talking to him about that and various other co-productions that he has done with his brother. That's on Friday. Then, on Monday at 8:00. Then on Friday, I am interviewing actress and musician Grace Rizzo. Grace recently just finished Mayans. So she was in 17 episodes of Mayans MC. That was pretty much her first acting job. But she's also quite an accomplished musician. And she's coming in on Friday, I think at the same time, I think at 8:00, to talk to me about her work on Mayans and her music career. So quite a feisty individual by all accounts. So should be a pretty interesting interview.
Yeah.
And again, even though we've had big names on here, I'm very, very, I'm a big advocate of supporting people who are at the beginning of their career and talking to those sort of people that I feel might be breakout stars of the future. And I feel this lady could be one of them. So it'd be great to give her a bit of support in that regard, get her on the channel and hear about her journey so far. So that's next Friday. Plus, we got the Nielsen ratings on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess that's it from us. Thanks to everybody in chat for taking part. Sorry that we kind of had this at a different time, and I hope that didn't affect people's schedules too much. But don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell people about the channel. I've got actor Michael Ironside coming on for an interview pretty soon, so that's going to be absolutely amazing.
I can't wait.
I don't know when yet. It might be the 20th of May, but we're looking to lock that down fairly soon. So until then,
Kurahi.
Nice stretch.